My sister called me on a Tuesday evening in February, 6 weeks before her wedding, and the first thing she said wasn't hello. It was, I need you to understand this isn't personal, and I want you to hold that sentence for a second. Because in the entire history of human communication, no sentence that begins with this isn't personal has ever, not once, been about anything other than something deeply, irreversibly personal. She told me in the careful, almost rehearsed tone of someone who had practiced this conversation several times before making the call, that she and her fiancé had gone over the numbers one more time and decided they needed to cut the guest list by 8 people to stay inside the venue's catering budget, and that I was one of the 8, her own sister, a bridesmaid she had personally asked, personally fitted for a dress I had already paid for, personally promised a seat at the table closest to the head, gone, replaced, to save approximately $240 a head on a wedding that was costing her fiancé's family $60,000. Stay with me. Because what I didn't know that February night, what nobody in my family knew, what my sister certainly didn't know, was that the person who would eventually fill my seat at that wedding was going to change everything about how that day ended, and not one moment of it was something my sister saw coming. If you've ever been cut from something you were supposed to belong to by the very person who invited you there, subscribe right now, because this story is about to become something none of us planned. I need to take you back before that phone call, because the hurt of being uninvited from your sister's wedding only makes full sense if you understand the specific, layered texture of our relationship up until that point. My sister's name is Camille, and for most of our lives, we had been close in the way sisters are close when one of them is always slightly more golden than the other, not enemies, not even really rivals, just 2 people occupying the same family with a quietly unequal distribution of parental attention that neither of us ever fully discussed, but both of us felt in our bones every single day. Camille was the pretty one, the social one, the one who had friends at every table in every cafeteria she ever walked into. I was the reader, the quiet one, the one teachers liked but nobody made a movie about. We loved each other, genuinely, but we loved each other the way people love each other when they've never quite said the true, uncomfortable things out loud. When Camille got engaged to a man named Derek, a corporate attorney with excellent shoes and the particular kind of confidence that comes from never having had to fight very hard for anything, the wedding planning began immediately and consumed her with an intensity I had never seen her apply to anything else in her life. It became very quickly the central fact of her entire personality. Every conversation redirected back to centerpieces. Every family dinner eventually about florists or photographers or the ongoing operatic drama of the seating chart. I was patient about it, the way younger sisters learn to be patient about the things that matter most to the sister above them. And I showed up to every dress fitting, every vendor walkthrough, every tasting, because that's what you do when someone you love is building the biggest day of their life and needs bodies around her that she can trust. I paid $370 for the bridesmaid dress, sage green off the shoulder, a style that looked beautiful on Camille's other bridesmaids and only passable on me, but I bought it without complaint, because the complaint wasn't the point. The point was showing up. The point was being there. I want you to remember that dress and that number, because it's going to matter later, in a way that still makes my stomach do something complicated when I think about it. Then February came and she uninvited me. And the reason she gave catering budget, per head cost, the hard math of a guest, list that had grown beyond the venue's preferred head count, was so banal, so transactionally small relative to what it actually meant, that I couldn't even be properly angry about it at first. I just sat on my kitchen floor after we hung up, the way I seem to always end up on kitchen floors when life delivers its most absurd blows, and tried to find the emotional vocabulary for being cut from your sister's wedding like a line item in a spreadsheet. She didn't offer to return the dress money. She didn't offer to seat me differently or find a creative solution, or do anything other than explain the math and wait for me to tell her I understood. And I did tell her I understood, because some reflexes in families run so deep they bypass your actual feelings entirely and just produce the response the other person is waiting for. I understand, I said. I hope the day is everything you want it to. B. And then I sat on my kitchen floor until my legs went numb. If you've ever been so hurt that you skipped past anger entirely and landed straight in this strange, dissociated calm, comment floor below, because that's exactly where I lived for the next 3 days. And this story is about to show you why that calm was the best thing I could possibly have felt in that moment. Here is what happened with my seat at that wedding. Because this is the detail the entire story turns on, and I need you to understand it completely. When Camille called the 8 guests from her list, she sent polite apologetic notes to all of them, except me, because she'd called me directly. And except for one other person, a woman named Gloria, the 73-year-old great-aunt of Derek's, who had been a late addition to the list and was cut with the same spreadsheet logic Camille had used on me. Camille's wedding coordinator, a quietly efficient woman named B, who had been doing this job for 22 years and had, I would later learn, a deeply personal code of ethics about how guests were treated, made the calls to the other 6 uninvited people herself, professionally and compassionately. But Camille had specifically asked to handle Gloria personally because Derek's family was important to her and she wanted to manage that relationship herself. She never made the call. It got lost, genuinely lost, in the avalanche of vendor emails and final payment deadlines and rehearsal dinner logistics that consumed the last 6 weeks of Camille's pre-wedding life. She meant to call Gloria. She wrote it on 3 different to-do lists, and then the wedding morning arrived. The venue filled up, and nobody had actually told Derek's great-aunt Gloria that her seat no longer existed. Gloria arrived at 3:15 in the afternoon in a pale blue dress she had apparently bought specifically for the occasion, carrying a card and a gift and the particular dignity of a 73-year-old woman who had driven 40 minutes, alone to celebrate a family wedding, and discovered at the venue's welcome table that her name wasn't on the list. B, the wedding coordinator, found out what had happened in about 90 seconds and immediately did what 22 years of this job had trained her to do. She found a solution before it became a scene. The solution she found was my seat, still technically reserved under my name, in the system because nobody had updated the floor plan after. I was cut, sitting at table 3 close to the head table, with a clear sight line to the altar. And that is how Derek's great-aunt Gloria, a woman I had never met, a woman my sister had accidentally forgotten to uninvite, ended up sitting in my seat at Camille's wedding. I want you to sit with that for a second, really sit with it, before I tell you who Gloria actually was. Because what comes next is the part I still can't fully believe happened. Even with all the evidence of it sitting right in front of me, I need you fully inside this moment. The pale blue dress, the 40-minute drive, the seat with my name half erased from the floor plan. Before I show you how one uninvited woman in a sage green adjacent seat changed the entire trajectory of my sister's marriage, before the reception dinner was even served. Gloria was not just Derek's great-aunt in the family photo sense. She was, it turned out, a retired family court judge who had served on the bench for 26 years. A woman who had spent more than 2 decades presiding over the formal and informal agreements people make when they decide to build a life together. She was also, and this is the detail that changed everything, the person Derek's mother had been trying to get him alone with for 3 months. Because Derek's mother, a woman named Patricia who had flawless posture and the specific watchful energy of someone who always knew more than she said, had serious, specific concerns about the prenuptial agreement Derek had drawn up and never shown Camille. I learned all of this afterward, in pieces, the way you assemble a story from fragments when you weren't actually in the room for the main event. What I know is this: Gloria sat at table 3, and Derek's mother Patricia found her there before the ceremony started. And the two of them had a conversation that Patricia had been trying to engineer for months, specifically because Gloria was the one person in their family whose legal opinion Derek had always taken seriously, and Derek's mother needed someone with both legal standing and family authority to look at what was in that prenuptial agreement before the wedding became a marriage. Gloria apparently looked at the summary Patricia quietly showed her on her phone, right there at table 3, between the processional music starting and the bridesmaids beginning their walk, and said, in a voice that carried the full weight of 26 years on a family court bench, "This needs to be discussed before this goes any further. What happened in the 20 minutes between that moment and the ceremony being quietly delayed? Delay the guests were told was due to a minor issue with the sound system. Is the part I only know from what Camille told me herself weeks later. When she was finally ready to talk about it, Derek had included a financial clause in the prenuptial agreement that, according to Gloria's reading, would have severely limited Camille's access to any joint assets built during the marriage in the event of a separation, framed in language that was legally subtle enough that Camille's own quick review hadn't caught it. He hadn't told Camille about the clause specifically. He had presented the document as standard language, the kind of routine protection his attorney had recommended, and Camille, trusting him, had signed a preliminary version without having it independently reviewed. Gloria's intervention didn't end the wedding. I want to be clear about that, because this isn't a story about a marriage that shouldn't have happened. Derek, confronted quietly and calmly by his great-aunt in the 20 minutes before his own ceremony, did something that I think genuinely tells you who he is. Underneath the excellent shoes and the corporate confidence, he agreed immediately to have the clause removed before any legal filing was completed, and he apologized to Camille, not with excuses, but with the full, undeflected acknowledgement that he had let his attorney talk him into something he should have discussed with her directly, and that she deserved better than a document designed to protect him from a marriage he apparently actually intended to commit to entirely. The ceremony happened. It was, by all accounts, genuinely beautiful, but Camille walked down that aisle knowing something about her marriage and about her husband's character, under pressure, that she hadn't known when she woke up that morning, and she walked out of it having had a clause removed from her legal future by a 73-year-old woman in a pale blue dress, who was only sitting at table 3 because my sister forgot to make a phone call. If you're currently feeling something, I can only describe as the universe conducting itself with a kind of poetic precision that no human being could have engineered. Comment Gloria below, because that is exactly what I felt when Camille finally called me and told me the whole story, her voice doing that specific, humbled thing it does when she's genuinely been moved by something outside her control. She called me 3 weeks after the wedding, not immediately. Camille has never been a person who reaches toward difficult conversations quickly, and I think she needed 3 weeks to fully process what had happened and what it meant about the decision she'd made with my seat. She told me everything I've just told you in order, in a voice that was quieter than I was used to hearing from her. And then she said, if I hadn't cut you from the list, Gloria wouldn't have had your seat, and B wouldn't have put her at table 3, and Mom, my marriage could have started with something I didn't even know was in there. There was a long pause. And then she said, I'm sorry I cut you. I've been sorry since the day I did it, but I'm sorry in a completely different way now. I want to tell you what I said back to her, because I think it's the most important moment in this whole story, more important than the envelope, and the lobby, and the prenuptial clause, and all the dramatic machinery. The universe apparently needed to arrange to get us to this phone call. I said, you know what the most expensive thing at that wedding turned out to be? The $240 you tried to save. And she laughed. Genuinely, the first real laugh I had heard from her since before the wedding planning had swallowed her entirely. And something between us cracked open in a way I don't have a clean word for, not healed exactly, not resolved but real again, honest again, the way it is between sisters, when they finally stop performing the version of themselves they think the other one needs to see. I got the dress money back eventually, which Camille brought up herself and which I had genuinely stopped expecting. But what I got back that actually mattered was something harder to put a price on, the specific, irreplaceable feeling of being seen correctly by your own sister, of having her understand in the most concrete possible terms that leaving you out of something was never actually the budget move she thought it was. Some people are worth more at the table than the cost of feeding them. Some empty seats, it turns out, fill themselves with exactly the right person at exactly the right time. And the universe occasionally has opinions about the guest list that no spreadsheet is sophisticated enough to override. If this story moved something real in you, if you've ever been cut from something you deserved, to be part of by someone who loved you just not enough in that particular moment, tell me in the comments which part landed hardest. The kitchen floor, Gloria in the pale blue dress, or the phone call 3 weeks later. I read every single comment, and they shape every story I tell next. Subscribe now if you want more raw, real, unforgettable stories about the families we love and the moments that finally make us honest with each other. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the next reveal. And stay close, because the next story I'm bringing you is even more extraordinary than this one. And you are absolutely not going to want to miss how it unfolds.